Hi, my name is Jacqueline Billett, and I am here today to give y'all a presentation about the Ebola virus. My mom and grandma are here with me. Y'all can say hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
And so yeah, I'm going to get started. And some background information on the Ebola virus. It was first discovered in 1976 near the Ebola River in Africa. There are now 5 identified Ebola species, which are Zaire, Sudan, Thai Forest, Bundibugyo, and Reston. The other name that Ebola virus goes by is hemorrhagic fever. Some of the disease pathology for it, it is single-stranded. That is a picture up there, as you can see, of the Ebola virus. It is membrane enveloped, and it is highly contagious and lethal. The people who contract the disease, they have a 50 to 90% mortality rate. Some signs and symptoms for the Ebola virus are fever, headache, diarrhea, vomiting, fatigue, muscle pain, abdominal pain, and hemorrhaging. The incubation period is 2 to 21 days, but on average it's 8 to 10 when you start seeing the symptoms. According to Robert Bauman in the microbiology textbook, the hemorrhaging appears to be due to the synthesis of a virally coded glycoprotein that is expressed on the surface of infected cells lining blood vessels in the body. This glycoprotein inhibits neighboring cells from adhering to one another, and this results in the blood leakage from the blood vessels. Transmission of the Ebola virus. The host remains unknown, the natural reservoir host, but many researchers believe it is animal-borne, and from their research they believe that it is the fruit bat, and here's a picture of the fruit bat. It spreads through blood and body fluids. The body fluids are included but not limited to urine, saliva, sweat, feces, vomit, breast milk, and semen. And many researchers have found out that the semen, it can have the Ebola virus still in it for several months after a man has survived from the virus. It can also be spread through bushmeat, which is raw meat of the wildlife in Africa. It can be spread through contaminated objects, including the needles and syringes used on infected patients, and also the clothing and bedding that they had, and also the infected animals. If you handle them, it is possible. Who is most affected by the Ebola virus? It's mainly the people living in the African countries, and this is a picture of all the colored countries in Africa that have had the virus outbreaks there. Also, people traveling to areas where there have been Ebola outbreaks, and healthcare workers taking care of the patients during the Ebola outbreaks. But as far as the main people, is the ones living in the countries where Ebola is common. The significance on communities, the Ebola outbreaks, they're epidemics and they occur sporadically, and they've done that since 1976. The disease is highly transmissible during these outbreaks. There's no cure for Ebola, but there are a lot of treatment options for the symptoms that Ebola causes. And that can be oxygen for breathing, the IV fluids so you don't get dehydrated from the vomiting and diarrhea, blood transfusions to get the virus out of the system, and various medications for like the pain that Ebola causes. Disease management for Ebola. If you're a patient who has Ebola, you need to be quarantined from all other patients. You can be quarantined with Ebola patients, but you can't be near other ones. Healthcare workers need to avoid direct, unprotected contact at all times. And there are some experimental treatments available for Ebola. And one is convalescent serum, and that is the antibodies of a person who has survived the virus or the disease, and that their antibodies are given to a person infected. It has been successful in several cases as well, and that's why it's the main experimental treatment. There's also ZMapp, which that is another treatment option, and what it does is it uses lab-created Ebola antibodies to prevent the virus from reproducing, and it clings to the virus to do this. ZMapp was experimented with monkeys, and all 18 of the monkeys that were given this treatment, they ended up surviving, and so it was very promising in monkeys, but it wasn't as promising with the results in humans. Also, there are other experimental treatments being developed and tested in an effort to find the treatment or vaccine that is most effective against the Ebola virus. However, this is a difficult process because the virus is fairly new, it's an emerging disease, and it's very rare. Pharmacological intervention. Here are 2 experimental drugs. Neither are FDA approved. There's no drug or treatment that is FDA approved at this time. And there's only a handful of experimental drugs that are available for various reasons. One is TKM Ebola, and what it does is it has interfering RNAs in the medicine that target the RNA protein in Ebola. The suppliers of this say that the supplies are limited because of the ingredients that they use. TKM Ebola was tested in 7 monkeys and 6 of them survived. And the creator of this drug said he will make the drug available to people in West Africa through a clinical trial. A second drug that has better results using this drug is brincidofovir. I may be butchering that, but what it does is it prevents the virus from replicating inside an infected person. The first man in the United States that contracted this disease, he was given it, and sadly he did pass away a few weeks later. But also an NBC cameraman was given this, and his results were very positive. Brincidofovir is also used for viruses such as adenovirus, cytomegalovirus, and smallpox. And they said that there are adequate supplies of this drug. Prevention for this disease is that you need to wash your hands with soap and water very well. Avoid contact with the blood and bodily fluids of people who are infected, and that goes for the semen, the sweat, anything else. You need to avoid handling items that may have come into contact with the infected person, and that includes the needles and syringes, any medical equipment, the clothing, and the bedding. Avoid burial sites. When people die in Africa, they do have ceremonies where they handle the body and put them in the grave. And this is a really bad idea for the people who were Ebola patients because the dead body can still have the disease and give it to others. You need to avoid bats and non-human primates because the bats are most likely the natural reservoir host, and non-human primates have been researched and they are possible to carry the disease as well. And avoid the bush meat. Avoid all raw meat, anything that's been handled through the wildlife in Africa. These are my 5 references that I used in my paper and my presentation. Thank you for listening. Do y'all have any questions?
Questions?
No? All